Today we have pretty much the dream saw. This is a Husqvarna 372 XP, and this one I think was dropped. So I'm going to go over how I take apart a saw and diagnose what's going on, what's wrong with it, and eventually put it back together in hopefully better shape than it is now. This saw actually runs, and it took a little bit to get it running, but it does run. So we've got that. Let's see if I can start it for you. It's late at night, so I don't want to run it too much. Anyway, so it does run. It runs reasonable well, but it's got some issues, and let's go through that, looking at the saw, seeing what's up and what's not. If I click the chain brake, that works. The throttle does work. The choke works. The on-off switch works. The decompression valve, as far as I can tell, works. So what doesn't work? What's wrong with the saw? Well, you notice something's wrong with the handle here, and if you, well, obviously we're missing the bar and chain, but I got one of those, so we don't worry about that. But you can notice there's something wrong with the spring. So the spring is kind of torqued in a funny way. Again, I think this was dropped. So something got bent somewhere. Not sure exactly what got bent, but I think it was probably the handle here, and it's torqued that spring off of center. So that's not a big deal, so we replace the handle, right? Well, alright, what about any other damage? And the big damage is actually under here. So the case itself has been cracked, which is unfortunate, and also the starter cover is cracked. Now, again, it works, but you really don't want this area exposed. It would be a whole lot better to have a new case piece, which means you have to split the case. So we're taking the whole thing apart in order to get to that. Looking at the sprocket, the rim looks okay, maybe a tad worn, but not too bad. When we get into here, we can look and see further what's up and what's not. This rubber piece may need to get replaced as well. It looks like it's kind of chewed up a bit there. So on first glance, we have some issues, but at minimum, we know we have to take the case apart. I got to split the case. So that's kind of where we are at minimum. So, which means you can't pay too much for this saw. You gotta, if you're splitting a case, and you're gonna spend, you know, $400 on a runner, that's not gonna pay. There's gonna be enough stuff on here that you need to remove and replace that. The numbers aren't going to work out, because you can buy running saws that don't have a case that's cracked for probably $400 or $500. Anyway, so if you have a saw needs a replacement case, you just got to be careful with how much you pay for it. Okay, so at least we know that the piston and cylinder's good. It runs. I did check the compression. We're about 145 on this, which isn't great, but it's not too bad. This model happens to be an xtorq model, so it's 2010 and newer. This one happens to be 2012. So let's go through this and see where we're at. Now, what I like to do when I'm doing a saw like this is I'm going to keep a list, piece of paper, of the parts that I need. Now, we can say also the parts that we want, too. So, for instance, this cover here, it's missing the XP sticker. Is that a big deal? Yeah. Cosmetically? Yeah, it's a big deal. Because you want to have the XP sticker on there. You bought an XP saw, you might as well have an XP sticker. So I don't know if that's actually available or not, but maybe it is, and maybe we'll pick it up. So I'm going to write down air filter cover XP sticker. Next thing handle. We need a new handle. How about this? Air filter. Just looking at this. Think we need a new air filter? I think so. Looks kind of dirty. Does it run? Yeah, it runs. Would it be better to have a new air filter? It would be better to have a new air filter. So let's get a new air filter. The carburetor does work, so we don't need to worry about that. The spark plug I just put on here new, so we don't need to worry about getting another one of those. We know the decompression valve works. But let's start taking this thing apart and see what else is going on. At this point, I'm kind of thinking that I might as well remove the handle first and see if we actually need a new spring, because if this AV spring is completely shot, then I'm going to need a new spring there. So let's take these apart. Well, I see some pieces came out of that. I am not too super encouraged by that. Oh, you know what? I noticed something else. We have a crack on the chain brake handle here. You know what? I may not need to replace that. Let's see here. That'll be an optional replacement. We'll put that down. Chain brake handle. Write that down. Let's take the two screws from the bottom. So something definitely happened with this handle. I'm just going to vote to throw that right out. And I really don't like the look of this AV spring. Now the real question is, are other models AV springs? Okay, so I have this 4mm Allen, goes inside the AV spring and attaches to the motor. So it looks to me like this is a fairly universal part, which means I might actually have a new one. You go to buy one of these somewhere else and it's going to cost you some bucks. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there, and I don't like the look of it. So let's see if I got a new one. So this one here comes off of a Husqvarna 350. You know what? Looks darn close to me. Threads look like they match. Let's see if it fits. Looks pretty good to me. That should work fine. I may actually go back and Loctite that, but we can worry about that later. So this I'm going to deem to be junk, and we're going to throw that out. That way it's gone. Let's take the cover off here and see what that looks like. Something else I noticed. The dogs here, this one's straight, this one's not. That one's all bent. So maybe I can bend that back. Maybe I just need a new dog. Like I had before in my other video, let's use a magnetic tray. That way we keep everything straight. Now this clutch cover, yeah, it's beat up, but you know, it's probably fine. Yeah, a little bit of oil here, but by and large this is alright. This is all chewed up. This part here. Absolutely no idea how to remove that. Seems like it just comes off like that. Don't worry about destroying it here because I'm gonna get new anyway. Clutch cover rubber piece. So as I'm writing things down, you get the sense that this is not going to be a cheap rebuild, and this is only a 2012 saw. This is not a not an old saw necessarily. I think that's Phillips head in there. Yeah, I think that's Phillips head just to mess us all up. Okay, so on the clutch cover here, there appears to be this plastic keeper piece, which is a little bit messed up. But it's actually, I believe it's Phillips. Phillips, you can use it with a flathead too. It's an either or screw. The problem is with these little parts, they just end up being so frigging expensive, and everything adds up. You know, there's 100 different parts on this saw, so every little part that you have to replace is going to add up to something probably significant. So again, all major parts, I'm going to go put them in a box. That way we don't lose anything. I'm going to keep the air filter in the box too, even though I'm going to throw it out, because probably this piece up top here, I'm going to want to save that. Let's take the top cover off next. Get the spark plug wire out of the way. That's going to come off. Now these top cover bolts here are kind of messed up. This one looks like it's okay, but these, I'd love to replace them. If possible, when you're redoing a saw, you want to make it fresh, you know, so everything gets fresh on the saw. Let's do the starter cover. Now this has an issue with the starter cover. I will probably replace the starter cover. Also, there's supposed to be a metal bushing right inside here that helps kind of reinforce the starter cover, and it's missing. Something is stripped out there. Yuck. Again, there's supposed to be a metal piece right in here, I think. There's a thread in there for it, and it tends to disappear on these saws. So, based on this crack, I mean, the starter cover still works, but it'd be really nice to have a new starter cover. Cord looks alright, pulls okay. You can save all the guts, does save you a few bucks at least. So another part that needs to get replaced, the shroud here. This is cracked and messed up pretty significantly. So let's get the spark plug wire here. Now this spark plug wire is actually almost through. Almost through. Which means ideally, replace the wire. This is a blue limited coil. Ideally, replace the coil. Might as well replace the coil. And I don't have a problem getting an aftermarket coil for these things, but still, it's another part I got to replace. Let's get rid of these wires first. So I'm going to write this down. Air shroud. Let's see if we can pull the ignition coil off. That's not good. Oh, come on. I just can't catch a break with this saw. So, look at this flywheel. It's got notches all the way around. What hit that? And that's only a single bolt holding the ignition coil on. I really don't know what's going on there. But now I'm really hoping that this other one isn't stripped out. If it is, I'm going to be disappointed. Let's see. Nice low torque setting. Seems to be alright. But I'm missing an ignition coil screw. What happened to that flywheel? Well, I don't think I'd necessarily replace the flywheel. You could. If my 385XP flywheel fits, and boy it might. They look darn close to identical to me. Maybe I'll throw that one on. I'll check the part numbers on the back and see if they're identical or not. Man, with a drop saw, you just never know what's going on and what you need to replace. Let's go next to taking off the chain brake handle here. Let's see how we do that. small screw there. That just comes right out like that. Pulls right out. So a small break here. I don't think I'm going to really worry about that. I think I'll keep the straighten that out. I think I'll keep this for now. I'd like to have fresh, but at this point I'm not really that worried about it. So let's put this away. That is a lot of damage to an ignition coil. No wonder the other screw there didn't hold it down. So I'm going to have to toss this ignition coil. That goes on there. Before I get too much further, one thing I just did was I actually replaced the top cover bolts to something that's more even. I don't like it when there's one bolt that's one kind and one bolt that's another kind. Even though they're all Phillips, I just like things to be even when I'm building a saw. So now that that's good, now I can put this in the pocket over there. I was looking for bolts for the ignition coils, and I don't think I have an exact match. So the ignition coil is bolt is this one. It's got a little bit more of a flange head. I think it's M5 by 0.8, so that should work just fine. I don't see what's wrong with that. If I want to put a washer on there, I can. If for whatever reason it bottoms out, I can just chop it off. So I will have to find a couple of those so we keep it even again. Now the other top cover bolts that I had are busted, so I'm just going to throw those out. I happen to have one that was similar back in the pile over here of actually Husqvarna 350 stuff, so we're going to ignore that for the moment. Next thing's next. Let's drain the gas. Gas is drained. Gotta drain the oil too. Gonna have to drain the oil because we're gonna have to crack the case here. So I might as well get that drained. Now one of the things I don't like about these caps is that a flat blade screwdriver is supposed to go in them, but you're almost guaranteed to bugger it. You need a wider flat blade so you don't have trouble, and don't have that on a scrunch. So you have to be very gingerly anytime and every time you open up the caps. And since most loggers probably aren't ginger when they open up anything, now I've had saws, gotten saws off eBay and whatnot that have had crankcase oil in them. Motor oil. That's a no-no. You don't do motor oil in your chainsaw. You do bar and chain oil in your chainsaw. That's just what you do. Pretty simple. Let's see if we can remove the rear handle with the gas tank and all that stuff. If we can remove that, then I think we'll be in better shape here. This saw was used, huh? So the next thing I'm going to do is remove that. I'm going to get rid of this. does not look like an OEM screw. But apparently it worked okay. This one out. So the two anti-vibe screws are out. Something tells me that's not the end of it. Another screw over here. Positioning screw maybe? Maybe it's got to have a rubber mount on it. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff to consider when you're going through a saw. That one over there sure looks like it has to have a rubber mount. So another thing that we need to do is take the throttle control linkage off. So we move the throttle forward, the linkage here pops up, pull it back, let the throttle go, and then we're going to remove this rubber piece here. The throttle cable can be pulled, the cable housing itself can be pulled down and out. Hope you can see that. And that seems to be in fine shape, no worries there. Don't forget there's a black electrical line that goes this way. So I'm going to remove that screw very carefully. This looks like one of those screws that could easily get lost. Misplaced, mistaken, whatever. Push those through. Push that throttle linkage through. We got some fuel lines to contend with. So this is the impulse line. We're going to pull that off. Fuel line, which apparently is still under pressure. Well, we know that we can pressurize the fuel tank. Now this other line here, which just literally fell off, looks like it's going to need to be replaced. Pull that down and through. We'll investigate that later. No, that was the fuel line. We're going to find out. Felt like something had let go. That looks like a line that's been tweaked. That's going to need to get replaced. Oh. Sorry. That looks like it's going to need to get replaced. Sorry about the camera there. But you can see here, this is just, that's not right. Why is this not coming apart? There's gotta be a trick to this. When I learn the trick, I'll let you know. There's a rubber piece in here that I just removed from the anti-vibe just to see if that gives me enough room to remove this. It really just doesn't want to go. There should be a... There. Here's the rubber piece, and here's where it belongs on there. Before you separate them too far. Yeah, anyway, you get the idea. And this fuel line looks like it's thinned out a little bit here. So it's going to be a good idea to replace the whole thing here. All the lines, we'll replace them.